In 363 AD, the revolutionary emperor Julian the Apostate was killed, and his brand of paganism died with him. The army, starving and trapped, panic-elected a new emperor, Jovian. His first act? He signed a humiliating peace treaty and instantly reversed his predecessor's entire channel. This is the story of the most rebrand in history. Julian the Apostate, a genius, a revolutionary, a superstar, was killed. His army, lost in enemy territory, picked a random general named Jovian to take his place. This is the story of the most impossible follow-up in history and what it teaches us about the crushing pressure of legacy. This is the story of Jovian, the accidental emperor who won the throne against all odds, only to die 8 months later in a bizarre, unglamorous accident in his tent. This is a lesson about meteoric rise and the anticlimactic dangers of the top. Thank you for sticking with me to the end. This is Czar, and now I want to hear from you. What was your biggest takeaway from this? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to be part of this community, please subscribe and share this video. It helps more than you know. Thanks for watching. Today we're talking about one of the most forgotten emperors in Roman history, Jovian. His story is a powerful lesson for Romans. What happens when you are handed success by accident? Jovian was a high-ranking general. He was the commander of the imperial guard, a good Christian, and famously tall and good-natured. But he was not a political genius. He was a background character. Then, in 363 AD, the star of the show, Julian the Apostate, was killed by a spear during his disastrous invasion of Persia. The Roman army was now leaderless, starving, and trapped deep in enemy territory. They were in total panic. They needed a new emperor, right now. The generals gathered. They offered the throne to another general, a man named Seleucus. He was old and wise, and he said, "Absolutely not. I'm too old for this." So, dear friends, in this confusion, a few soldiers, probably Jovian's own friends, started chanting his name. Jovian! Jovian! The rest of the panicking, leaderless army just gone along with it. And just like that, Jovian was the new emperor of the Eastern Roman world. That's why history called him accidental emperor, who just got handed a throne because the main star quit. Friends, Jovian's first and only major act as emperor was a colossal failure. He's inherited a throne that's dying, an army that's starving. His first decision was a cringe one. He had to choose whether he let his audience, the army, die of starvation, or he make a sellout deal to save them. He chose the deal. To understand better, dear friends, he had ambitions to have peace, and to save his men, Jovian signs the humiliating peace of 363 with the Persian king, Shapur II. The terms were a catastrophe. He surrendered 5 entire provinces of Roman territory. He gave up the unconquerable fortress city of Nisibis, the key to the entire eastern defense. He essentially abandoned Rome's Christian allies in Armenia. If we understand philosophy of that time or mindset of Roman military, it was according to it, as Roman assumed always much stronger and leading nation in the world. Jovian mismatched this mindset in order to prolong his rule, at least my own opinion after reading some historian. The army was saved, but his reputation was destroyed. The Roman elite, the core community, was horrified. He had sold out. He had given away the land that emperors had fought and died for. This was the mindset, friends, which led Jovian's rule in Roman history a disaster. This was his failure, a humiliating peace deal that would stain his name forever. But Jovian was no fool. He knew his first act was a flop. He needed a new direction. He needed to rebrand the Roman society and his glory of past. The previous emperor, Julian, had built his entire brand on a radical new paganism. He had canceled Christianity, banned Christian teachers, and was trying to bring back the old gods. Dear friends, if we closely observe, the pillar of Eastern Roman Empire was Christianity and Greek-speaking Orthodox majority. Jovian looked at the army, the population, and saw that paganism is a dead end. The people were Christian. So Jovian performed the most blundering 180-degree pivot in Roman history. He restoration of Christianity. He immediately canceled all of Julian's pagan reforms. He brought back the Christian symbol, the Chi Rho, to the army's banners. He ended the persecution of Orthodox bishops and invited the great Athanasius of Alexandria back from exile. This was his one great achievement. He ended the religious civil war. He saw the paganism rebrand was failing, and he had the courage to pivot the entire empire back to the Christianism ideology that the original founder, Constantine, had made famous. Friends, and all this was being done before even he has reached the capital. He had saved his army and he had rebranded his empire. He was now finally on his way to Constantinople to claim his throne and rule the entire Roman Empire, but he had never made it. Jovian's story is the ultimate lesson. He got the ultimate success, the imperialistic life, and throne. He reigned for only 8 months. In February 364 AD, while traveling to Constantinople, he stopped for the night in a small town called Dadastana. The next morning, his guards found him dead in his tent. Soldiers hate surrendering territory. The evacuation of Nisibis, a city they had successfully defended for decades, was a bitter and shameful experience. A mixed bag. They were grateful he had saved them from Julian's disastrous campaign, but they had no deep loyalty to him and were ashamed of the peace he had signed. I must say that the official story was accidental suffocation. The room was cold and damp, so a charcoal brazier was lit to warm it. The fumes, carbon monoxide, killed him in his sleep. A slightly different version is that the tent had been freshly painted, and the toxic paint fumes killed him. Or was he murdered? He was a compromised candidate. The army despised him for the Persian treaty. Did other, more ambitious generals like Valentinian, the man who would succeed him, decide this accidental emperor was too incompetent and have him quietly assassinated in his sleep? We will never know the truth. As I mentioned earlier, most modern historians consider the accidental carbon monoxide poisoning story to be the most plausible. It was a common danger in the ancient world, and the specific details provided by Ammianus give it a ring of truth. A deliberate assassination, while possible, lacks any direct evidence from contemporary sources. Emperor Jovian most likely died in a tragic accident. However, the circumstances of his controversial reign and sudden death mean that the possibility of a political assassination cannot be entirely ruled out. The army, once again leaderless, had no loyalty to a baby in a faraway palace. They needed a strong general now. They gathered and elected a new emperor, the formidable and strong soldier Valentinian I. If we look at his private life, Jovian was married to Charito, the daughter of a high-ranking military official, Lucilianus. The fact that his father-in-law was a powerful general in the West was likely a factor in his election by the army. Together, they had at least one son who survived infancy. Jovian's primary goal, besides restoring Christianity, was to immediately establish his own dynasty. He wanted to replace the Constantinian dynasty, which had just ended with Julian, with a new Jovian dynasty. His heir was his infant son, Veronianus. Jovian moved with incredible speed. For the upcoming year of 364 AD, he named 2 consuls, the highest honor in the empire, himself and his baby son. Naming an infant as consul was a clear, unambiguous message to the entire Roman world. It was a practice used by Constantine to designate his sons. Jovian was telling the Senate and the army, "My bloodline is the new imperial line. This child will one day rule." It had never happened as he died. We know already, friends, that was not modern day philosophy, so Valentinian needed to eliminate this threat without the political stain of murdering a child. He resorted to a brutal political tactic, mutilation. Historical sources, including the writings of the 5th century historian Philostorgius, state that the young Veronianus was blinded in one eye. In Roman and later Byzantine imperial ideology, the emperor had to be physically perfect. By mutilating the child, Valentinian permanently disqualified him from ever being a legitimate claimant to the throne, as a flawed man could not rule. This was considered a merciful alternative to execution. Also, if we observe the historian Ammianus Marcellinus, he records the heartbreaking detail that Charito, wife of Jovian, was traveling to meet her new emperor husband when she was met on the road by his funeral procession. As the daughter of a high-ranking general, Lucilianus, she was part of the military aristocracy and was likely treated with a degree of respect. However, the 4th century writer John Chrysostom noted that after her son's mutilation, she lived out the rest of her life in constant fear, understandably terrified of the new regime that had destroyed her family's future. She was allowed to retire from public life and oversee her husband's burial in the Church of the Holy Apostles in Constantinople. Dear friends, Jovian was a savior. He was elected in a panic, deep in enemy territory at the Persian and Byzantine borders, with the entire army starving and facing annihilation. His peace treaty, while humiliating, saved their lives. He successfully led them all the way home. Jovian's story is a bizarre lesson in accidental success. He was the man handed a crisis who chose a sellout peace to save an army. He reigned only for just 8 months, a brief, chaotic, and almost comical pause between two of the most powerful dynasties in Roman history. We shall talk about it in next episode. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. See you in next episode of Eastern Roman Empire.